Happy Thursday, everyone. So good to see you for a special online KGW Q&A. I'm Galen Ettlin. Thank you for being here. Last week, we talked all about finding success through distance learning right now, and we are sticking with education. We want to help you out, maybe have a little bit of fun. This time, it's a free and fun lesson all about kids and the questions they sent us about science. And we are joined by two very special guests today. KGW Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino and his son Enzo to help answer those questions and just have a fun discussion today. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here.
Hey, Galen, it's our pleasure. Enzo, what do you say?
What?
That's our cat. He's pointing at our cat, which is in the distance. But say hi to everybody, Enzo.
Hi.
He says hi. So, we're excited to be here. The questions, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think so too. And your cats are famous. It's good to point them out, honestly. We see them every day on TV, so it's fun. And some of these questions are pretty wild. We'll get to them here in a moment. But Enzo, I want to start with you here. First of all, very nice to have your perspective. You know, I think a lot of kids out there are trying to figure out how to make learning fun right now when they're stuck at home through all of this. What sort of things do you enjoy learning about?
Um,
Geometry, what else, bud? That's not it. What's your favorite subject? Come on. Geometry slash math. Ah, he loves math. What makes it fun
that
for you?
fun?
It's just fun. It's just intrinsically fun. Do you like doing equations or it's interesting? Do you like how numbers come together or do you like problem solving? Equation. Okay. Do you like applying that to the real world? Like how many jelly beans are in a jar? And if you divide that by 10 people, then how many jelly beans does everybody get? That kind of thing? You would need to know that, wouldn't you?
Well, there's all sorts of things that you can apply it to real life, and we're going to talk about all sorts of those questions. And it's so great to have both of your perspectives on this. So, Enzo, if ever you want to jump in and give your thoughts about a question, please feel free. Don't hesitate. But Matt, I think we're going to start with this question here. This one's from Jaden, and he asks, "Why does it hail in the summer but not snow?"
That's a great question. Right up my alley. Right? Because I am the weather guy after all, right? What do you have thoughts on this, Enzo? No idea. I think you do have an idea, but I'll answer this for you. So in the summertime, well, first of all, when it snows, what's the one thing that we all know about the weather when it snows? It's cold outside, right? So the temperature needs to be at or below freezing. We can occasionally get snowflakes when it's a few degrees above freezing in the wintertime. But in the summertime, it's way above freezing. Even on a day like today, which is kind of cool, we're in the 50s or so. So that's far too warm for snow. Yet, it does hail. Hail is ice. So why do we get ice in the form of hail and not snow? And the question is the processes that create both types of precipitation. Hail is one type of precipitation. Snow is another type of precipitation. So is rain. So there's lots of types. But in the summertime, the clouds are building up really high in the atmosphere. And they build up so high that they actually are in an area of the atmosphere where the temperature is below freezing. So way up high in the cloud, the raindrops are still forming into little ice balls because it's below freezing. And a hailstone makes many trips through a cloud. It's kind of like this. This is the hailstone. There are updrafts in the cloud. And if the hailstone isn't big enough, it's pushed upward. And then it gets a little heavier because there's more water from the cloud. It makes it a little bigger, a little heavier. The updrafts weaken as you get high, so it starts to fall back down. Then it hits the updraft again. It gets pushed back up, and it gets another layer of ice. It gets a little heavier. And that process continues, this cycle up and down through the cloud until the hailstone gets heavy enough to overcome the updraft and fall on down to the ground and hit things. So that's why we get ice in the form of hail in the summertime. It can be 45, 55, even 60 degrees. When you get hail, it will eventually melt. But when it gets to be big enough and it's a ball of ice, falls on down into the warm air, it's just like taking an ice cube out of your refrigerator and throwing it out on the sidewalk. It takes time for it to melt back into water.
I just learned a bunch of things there. I didn't realize that clouds were often higher in the summer and therefore in a colder part of the atmosphere. That's really interesting.
Yeah, when we're talking about, we call that those are convective processes, convection oven, and it means the heat is going upward. So the really tall thunderstorms can grow up to 40, 50 feet high. And no matter what time of year that happens, that's going to be well below freezing up there in the summer or in the winter too. So the atmosphere is still as cold and even colder in the wintertime, but it's also colder down low. So we tend to get snow. We don't have those convective processes as much in the wintertime as we do in the summertime when we get the big thunderstorms. And you've seen those big tall clouds that will shoot up. We had them the other day, actually. Those are very high in the atmosphere, and up high in the atmosphere, it's pretty much always below freezing. So we'll get the raindrops forming into ice balls, and then they eventually fall out, as I said.
All right, well, today we're answering questions sent to us by kids all over the area. And this one is a science question, not necessarily about weather, but, Matt covers the board here. So Cole Compton asks, age 10, on a scale from 1 to 100, how likely is it that Mount St. Helens will erupt again? This is a very timely question, too. We are coming up on the 40th anniversary on Monday.
Yeah, we are. Big, big anniversary. You want to take this one? All right, what do you got? 100% likely that Mount St. Helens will erupt again. Yeah. And not only is it, and we're talking long time frames in the next week or year, maybe not even in the next 10 or 50 years, but it will erupt again. It's a volcano and it's active. The geologists tell us that it is the one Cascade volcano that is most likely to erupt again. How about that? Would you like to see it erupt?
Yeah. Well, no, but yeah.
Why no?
Because I don't want to die.
That's a good reason. Maybe just don't be too close when it looks like it's about to happen.
Yeah, but that would be like.
Well, we're about 50 miles away, so we'd probably be safe in Portland. It erupted 40 years ago, and people from Portland saw it. You know what they were doing 40 years ago? Everybody was wearing masks. They were even putting masks on their kitties so they wouldn't breathe in the ash from Mount St. Helens.
It's an interesting parallel till now. Obviously, different reasons, but
right,
kind of a similar scene now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Well, this is another one from Cole asking, what are the chances of a meteor hitting the Earth in the near future?
So we just happen to have Earth. You gonna take that one? Here's a meteor. The chances.
0.1.
0.1%. 0.1%, according to Enzo and NASA, as it turns out, that a meteor big enough to hit a city would hit Earth in any given year. That seems really high to me because that's 1 in 1,000. I've seen other research that says chances of a meteor hitting Earth in the near future are like 1 in 10,000. You don't need to be too worried about this, though. NASA tracks all large objects, anything that could be big enough to cause any problems here on Earth. The little ones burn up in our atmosphere. Our atmosphere does so many things to protect us, and that's one of them. And in fact, you can watch them burn up in the atmosphere at night. Those are called shooting stars. And those are really small ones, like grains of sand. The big ones are fireballs, and they last longer, and they are seen over longer, greater distances. And if they're really big, they don't completely burn up, and they reach the ground. Those are called meteorites. But in the last 1,000 years, not a single meteorite has hit a person. So the odds of that happening are really low. Now, there are some historical records from the Chinese from, more than 1,000 years ago, apparently, of people getting hit by meteorites. But that was a long, long time ago, and I don't think we're seeing as many as we saw now as we saw back then. So the odds of a meteor crashing into Earth and causing any problems are really, really small.
It is really small, but I agree with you, Matt. That percentage from NASA does seem higher than I would have expected, just because we're so small in the big scheme of things.
Right. I was surprised to hear that too, that 0.1% in any given year. But, think about that. I'm like, okay, well, in the last, 50 to 100 years, it's never happened. So it seems like the odds would be lower than that.
So we're overdue, it sounds like.
Yeah, I guess that's one way of looking at it. Do you think we're overdue, Enzo? For a meteor to hit Earth? Do you think we're overdue? You want a meteor to hit Earth?
No.
Why not?
Because people will die.
Yeah, that'd be bad. That'd be bad.
It's definitely bad.
I might die.
We don't want that.
No, we definitely don't. Well, Enzo, you've got the NASA knowledge down, so maybe that's in your future as well. Let's stick with some outer space questions here. Zane Cooper's got a wild one, I've got to admit. He asks, to colonize Mars, so that's already, an interesting topic there, would it be possible to drop a nuclear bomb on it to start climate change so it could be habitable and warmer? Mars is pretty cold.
Whoa. That is what you got this one?
Yeah, it's no.
Why is it no?
Because it would just make it a little warmer. We need oxygen.
So he hits on two good points there. First of all, the atmosphere of Mars is made up. You have a really good job there, buddy. The atmosphere of Mars is made up primarily of carbon dioxide, which is not what we breathe. Just like Enzo said, we need an atmosphere that's made up of oxygen, that has a lot of oxygen, because that's what our bodies are developed to use. Also, the atmosphere of Mars is really, really thin. It's only about 1% as dense as the atmosphere of Earth, which is why so many more things hit Mars, and why they get these wild temperature fluctuations. So even a nuclear bomb wouldn't be powerful. First of all, it wouldn't change the composition of Mars's atmosphere. It wouldn't change what Mars's atmosphere is made of. It wouldn't change it from carbon dioxide to oxygen, which is what we need. And it wouldn't make it thick enough to protect the planet, Mars in this case, from the things that come from space. So our atmosphere does a couple things. It provides us with oxygen to breathe, but it also protects us from harmful rays from the sun, and from meteors, like we were talking in the last question. And so without that atmosphere, even a nuclear bomb wouldn't be enough to make it habitable for humans.
Yeah, the Earth is right in that sweet spot where we've got a good temperature, a good atmosphere to really sustain life. So that's such a key point, I think, when we're talking about, can we live on Mars? There's a ways to go, I think. Well, let's talk about Earth, and one of the reasons that makes it habitable for a lot of people. It's like 70% water, right? About that much, I think, is my trivia from back in the day. Zane follows up with another question asking, how did oceans start to form on Earth? A key part to life here.
Ooh, Enzo, we just spent some time at the ocean.
What?
How did oceans form on Earth? You have any answers on that one, or should I take it? Okay.
Forget
that is a really great question. How do the oceans form on Earth? So it goes back to when Earth was not fully formed, actually. We're talking not even millions, but billions of years ago. And the water had to get here by one of two processes, either from comets and meteors hitting Earth and depositing water here, or from the interior of Earth itself. And scientists who have looked at this, and this has been a question that has been perplexing science for quite a while, but scientists looked into this and they found that the Earth, the water on Earth has the same makeup of some of the rocks deep within the Earth's core. So the Earth, long time ago, it was above the boiling point of water. The temperature of Earth was over 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So all of the water around Earth was just vapor. And then Earth began to cool. So that vapor formed into clouds and it began to rain. But that vapor came from the rocks within Earth when Earth was just beginning to form. It was only about a quarter to a half as big as it is now. That's a really deep question. Yeah, I did there a little pun, but it really is a deep question, and a good question, and one is so basic to life on Earth, and one that scientists even now are still working the details out. But that's a great question. But yeah, the answer is the water in the oceans came from within Earth and the rocks itself. And as they were off-gassing, volcanic explosions, all of that, that helped to give us the water that we have in the oceans today.
All right, I'm going to get to some more kids' questions here in a minute, but we've got a couple more from Zane that I think are really interesting, and I think will play right into your wheelhouse, Matt. Zane asks, is it possible to create artificial weather? Can we control the weather by controlling clouds?
What do you think, Enzo? Can we create our own weather?
Probably not.
Yeah. In the large scale, I think you're probably right. There are weather modification programs, and the most common example of this is what we call cloud seeding. And cloud seeding is this: to get clouds to form, you need little specks of dust, little tiny specks of dust, for the water to condense on. Okay, and without that, there's just a bunch of super cooled water up there, and it doesn't really form droplets big enough to fall out. So what cloud seeding does is we put what we call condensation nuclei into the clouds, and typically it's been a couple different chemicals. One is silver dioxide, I think. And what that does is those are little specks that water goes, yes, I like to glom onto that for chemical reasons. So it makes these water droplets bigger. And when you're doing that, when you're making these big water droplets, it's taking the water vapor out of the atmosphere. This is cloud seeding. And it creates big enough droplets that it actually makes it rain out. So they've done this around airports in the winter to clear the fog away so that planes can land. And it works. Now, there's been a couple of disasters in the early days of cloud seeding. They're actually seeing cloud more too well. That is, it rains cause some flooding down below. So weather modification is a tricky subject, and there are ethical concerns about it as well. I mean, should we be actually modifying the weather? So that's one that is a really interesting question on a lot of different levels. But to control it, that would be really hard. I mean, we can modify it for a short amount of time and in a short space. To really control the weather, I don't think so. No. And I like that about the weather. I like
Many 3-year-olds think you can control the weather.
that.
Because you're the weather.
Yeah, they say, how come the weather has to do what you say?
All right. Well, this is another weather question from Zane, and I think it's a pretty broad one. And it's actually one I don't think I know the answer to either because I forgot. What causes fog?
Oh, great question. We were just talking about that. So what a great dovetail. You know what causes fog, Enzo? Air is got a lot of humidity in the air. There's a lot of humidity in the air, and then the air cools. The water vapor in the air, the humidity condenses because water vapor is a higher energy than liquid water. Move the heat by cooling it, it goes back to the liquid form of water, which can be fog or cloud. So it's all about cooling. Two things. You have to have a good moisture supply, and then you have to be able to cool the air. And then you also need something I mentioned in the last answer, the all-important condensation nuclei. But those are usually fairly readily available in the wintertime, especially, which is why we tend to get a lot of fog in the winter.
All right, that's a great answer. Lyle asks this next question and asks, "What's the summer outlook look like this year?" I'm guessing that means for weather. What are we in for?
Yeah, we'll stick with weather on that one for sure. I think we're looking at a pretty normal summer. We'll get our normal, amount of hot days. So probably a dozen or so days over 90, maybe 1 or 2 days where we're up over 100. I'm not seeing any indications that would lead me to believe it's going to be a really cool and wet summer or a really, really hot summer either way. So I think we'll be kind of right good summer, which is
All right, this next one from Rob. We're just going to punch through them here. People are suggesting sunny days are helpful in killing coronavirus. Ultraviolet light and heat? Question mark. Please help clear this up.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I actually came across this question recently myself and texted a dermatologist about this. Really?
I think it is yes. The answer is yes.
You think the answer is yes? That heat and sunlight will help to kill the coronavirus?
But actually, no. That's what started.
No, I don't think that. No, that's not true.
Fruit bats started it.
That's what we think. Yeah. So back to this question, I think that sunlight and heat can kill the coronavirus on surfaces. So if you have a cardboard box or a piece of paper and you put that out in the sun, expose it to sunlight, it will kill viruses that are on surfaces like that. But in a person, no. It's not going to cure coronavirus if you have it. Exposing yourself to heat or radiation, that will do it. But on the surface things, yes, I think science has shown that it will kill the virus if it's exposed to heat and light and direct sunlight. Maybe when you get your packages from Amazon, leave them out in the sunshine for a few hours, and that helps to kill any viruses that may be stuck to them.
Yeah, viruses need other living things to attach to stay alive and replicate. So that makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, moving back to weather here, Kimmy asks, are we going to have any good thunderstorms this summer? You did mention
Yeah.
why we have thunderstorms more often in the summer. What's the outlook for that?
Yes. Enzo's forecasting yes. And I agree with him. It's amazing. It can be very difficult to get two weather forecasters to agree on a forecast sometimes. But we
There you
do.
go.
And yeah, and I think the odds are good that we're going to see thunderstorms. We've had some. We could even see some today, as a matter of fact, somewhere in Western Oregon. Yeah, there's likely going to be good thunderstorms in Oregon. But Kimmy, here's the point about thunderstorms. Will you get one? I think that's what Kimmy wants to know. Is Kimmy going to experience a thunderstorm wherever Kimmy happens to be? That's a much more difficult question. We don't get a ton of thunderstorms in Oregon, especially west of the Cascades. We only average 7 days a year with thunderstorms in Portland. So that's not very high when you compare it to someplace like Florida or the Midwest, where they get way more thunderstorms than we do because of their climatology. So we do get them. I think we will see them in Oregon. We'll see some in Portland this year. But Kimmy, I can't promise you that you're going to get one where you are at any one particular time. But I hope so for your sake. A good one, a safe one.
I do enjoy thunderstorms. I think it's really cool, especially because we don't
Right?
usually have the loud thunder as often as, say, other parts of the country. So it's really exciting when it does happen.
You like a good thunderstorm, Enzo? Yeah, they're super fun. And I think, Galen, I think a lot of Portlanders and Oregonians and Washingtonians feel the same way. It's kind of a special treat when we get a good thunderstorm. And one of the things I love about them, I mean, I love when I experience a thunderstorm. So professionally, I'm thinking about the processes, but just the power. The power is so awesome to experience and behold. So they are fun as long as they're not doing damage.
Absolutely. Well, this one's sort of in line with this and a very Pacific Northwest question here. Ryan wants to know, how come the weather was on and off last week? It was hailing, and then about an hour or so later, it just turned sunny like there was no clouds ever.
Yeah, we get a lot of days like that. So remember when I was talking about hail and we talked about how the clouds build up? Can I use this for a second? Can you make this go up and down? Up and down. So it was going up in the cloud, and I was talking about the clouds going really high and then not so high. Those are what I said before, convective clouds. And they may not be thunderstorms, but showers form with that same process. And when we have showers, they're in a small cell. Like the shower is in your bathroom, but it's in a confined space, and say the bathtub, and the bathroom's in your house. So those in your house is in a neighborhood, and those are all basically individual areas, is what I'm trying to say. It's not a widespread area of rain. So when we get those days where we have showers, you get a shower that moves away and there's clearing behind it. And then another shower moves in and then there's clearing behind it. So that's why we get those days where it's like crazy. It's like raining 1 minute, then it turns sunny, and then it's raining after that. It really changes around quite a bit.
Well, let's go back to outer space. Maybe, Enzo, you might have some perspective on this one because you're our NASA consultant. What's the weather like on Jupiter?
Um,
Windy.
Sandy.
Sandy. Interesting. Jupiter. Have you ever heard the term gas giant?
Yes, the Jupiter.
Yeah. Jupiter is a very interesting planet because it's massive and we can see it when in our sky at night often. But Jupiter, um, yeah, liquid and gases, exactly.
Liquid diamond.
You can't, can you stand on Jupiter?
No.
You can't even stand on Jupiter because it doesn't have a solid surface the way Earth does, and it's extremely hot. The temperatures on Jupiter are upwards of like 500 degrees. They're super, super hot. It doesn't have an atmosphere the way Earth does. So yeah, sorry, I said it was hot. It's actually very, very cold. Jupiter is a really cold planet, like minus 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So I had that wrong, just backwards in my head. It's also made of hydrogen mainly is the primary gas on Jupiter. And it's interesting too because it's the heating, such as it is on Jupiter, being a very cold planet, isn't driven by the sun and the warmth we get from the sun like we have here on Earth. It's driven by the gases within the core of the planet. So it's a completely different animal as compared to Earth, but it's very, very cool. cold, basically, to answer your question.
Well, I think the big eye that people associate with Jupiter, isn't that also a big storm on the planet?
Like rolling gas storm, which is huge as well. I think several Earth diameters, just that one spot itself.
All right. Well, right now, I think I'm going to bring in Jared Cowley, senior digital producer for KGW, to talk about some of the resources that we've been putting online. Some of these questions have been really fun to listen to. Jared, what have you got for us here?
Yeah, before I talk about resources we have on kgw.com, I think this is the most fun I've had with a digital Q&A yet. Enzo, of course, is awesome and very knowledgeable, and Matt, he's pretty good too. But in my family, I've said this before on these digital Q&As, I have 5 kids, and we really like the weather in our family. Actually, when I interviewed at KGW a few years ago, I brought my whole family with me, and we toured the station. And my daughter at the time, she wanted to be a meteorologist. And so she was able to go into the weather center and stand in front of the big green weather screen and see how that works. And it was a complete accident, but she was wearing a green shirt that day. And she still talks about it a few years later today, how her whole body disappeared. And she loved that and still talks about it today. So that was awesome. And then...
Is she be a meteorologist?
Go ahead. Well, right now she's really into watching Grey's Anatomy right now, so now she wants to be a doctor, but she might get back to meteorology at some point. It might be awesome. But yeah, we love the weather. I have a video here if Jay, our producer, can pull it up. My same daughter who wanted to be a meteorologist, she took this video. It was the other day when it was hailing, and you can see here what happens when it hails and you jump on a trampoline that's covered with hail. And
have you done that?
So I've never done that. I was actually working that day, and my daughter wanted to go out there, and my other daughter wanted to record it. And you can kind of see how it, watch this in slow-mo. It's pretty awesome.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah,
it's almost like a special effect. Across it.
Yeah. So that was pretty awesome. And we didn't know that it was going to do that. You know, they just wanted to take a video of it. And it just turned out really cool. So we love the weather in our family.
Why did I not show that? Why did I not show that on the air, Jared? You needed to send that to me so I could show that on the air.
I put it on Facebook and Twitter, but I should have sent it to you, Matt. I should have sent it to you.
I didn't see it. I want to see.
Lessons learned.
Yes, that's right. But yes. Go ahead.
Here's a fun thing for people. I'm sorry. Here's a fun thing for people to do when it hails anybody else, especially if you get hailed. A lot of our hail is really small, but if you take a hailstone and you cut it in half, you'll see the layers like an onion. And those layers, every layer corresponds to one trip that the hailstone makes up through the cloud and back down. Remember how I talked about that earlier? So the hailstone goes up through the cloud, and it gets a layer of water from the supercooled water in the cloud on it. And then that water freezes into a layer and it makes it a little bigger. Then it starts to fall back down, but if it's not heavy enough, it gets pushed back up again. More supercooled water forms on it, freezes, forms another layer. And that process keeps happening until the hailstone, right. So the size of a hailstone is directly correlated to the strength of the updraft within the cloud. And I don't know if you know what I mean when I say updraft, but an updraft is basically air, like a column of wind that's going upward in the cloud and pushing things up. So that's why it's called an updraft. So if you take the hailstone, cut it in half, you'll see an onion.
What is the earth?
This is the commentary we need daily.
Yes. We've got we do have a lot of good weather resources on kgw.com. If you go on KGW, you're going to find hourly forecasts, daily forecasts, 10-day forecasts. We have weather radars, live weather cameras, lists of closings. You can find all of that at kgw.com on our weather page. And as always, as you saw there on the screen, every week when we do this digital Q&A show, we do have an article on kgw.com for the show. And in that article, you will find a ton of wonderful resources to learn more about every topic we cover on the show. So this week's article has a lot of great weather resources. And I do want to say that right now that story is front and center on KGW.com. But if you're watching this live stream, if you're going back to watch it a couple days from now, that story might not be on there. But if you do a search for KGW Digital Q&A, you'll be able to find all the stories, and it'll have all those resources. It'll have the live stream, so you can go back and watch the video if you want. And so I just invite you to visit KGW.com, go on KGW app, visit our YouTube channel, visit our Facebook and Twitter channels. We have a lot of great resources and a lot of great content. And Matt Zaffino has a pretty awesome podcast. If you like listening to podcasts, I'm going to let Matt talk a little bit about his podcast because it's fantastic. And I will.
Thanks,
end
Jared.
it there.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's called, we started it, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and it's called Under the Big Umbrella with Matt Zaffino. And we picked that name because of, obviously the weather tie-in with umbrella, but also I wanted to have a kind of a big umbrella, if to talk about a lot of different subjects under. So I talk about how the coronavirus has impacted recreation in the Northwest. We talk about climate change. I had one where I talked about frogs, which were chirping really early. I heard them in January and February, so that's the romantic frog episode. And I'm going to record another one probably today about Mount St. Helens itself. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, buddy. That's where I recorded the frog. Yeah, buddy, you're all so give me podcast, which is awesome. Thanks. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and the response has been pretty good. Everybody has ideas that they answered in form, shoot me an email, and try to do podcasts on ideas from viewers as well. Love hearing your ideas.
It is a really fun podcast, and it really covers the board too, kind of like the questions are that we have today. I'm going to get to 8 more questions from Miss Jessica Darling's 4th grade class at Northeast Portland's Vernon School here in just a moment. But I wanted to dovetail a little bit off of what Jared said, just something I remembered from growing up. I always went to OMSI with my dad, and you mentioning that your daughter tried the green screen reminded me of when, Matt, you used to do the weather at OMSI, and I remember seeing you a few times doing that. So just fun memory for me.
That's cool. Yeah, we are big fans of OMSI here, and I think they're still closed right now because of the coronavirus, but they will reopen, and it's one of Enzo's favorite places to go.
But the only thing they do.
Well, that's a very important right now, the cleaning aspect. Okay, let's get to some more questions because Enzo actually has to get down to his schoolwork too. So.
All right. That sounds good. All right. Miss Jessica Darling's 4th grade class at the Vernon School asked this. Amelia Love, question number 1 here. What's the best thing to do during a flood? Would going to higher ground put too much pressure on the land and create a landslide?
Higher ground is
Yeah.
higher ground, but no, not on the pressure, you mean?
Especially on a flat.
Oh, yeah.
And it has to be stable.
You don't want to create a landslide like they asked for that question, but the chances of
Or
putting...
tsunami.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole different ball of wax. The odds of going to higher ground and putting too much pressure on the ground and creating a landslide, that's pretty low. If there's a flood, especially a flash flood, like Enzo said, really good point, bud, you want to get to higher ground, absolutely.
Good advice. Question 2 here from Camilla Rogers. In your opinion, which natural disaster is worse, a tornado or a hurricane?
Ooh.
Hurricane.
Hurricane?
Yeah.
I agree. Why do you think a hurricane's worse?
Because it lasts longer.
Mhm.
And it impacts
Done. That's it. Good job, buddy. Nailed that. That's exactly right. I mean, tornadoes are terrible, and they've done untold damage, and done some incredibly bad things. But a hurricane, and they don't usually impact as many people. If you destruction get told from like Katrina versus one of our worst main numbers. I would probably rather take my chances with a tornado than a hurricane.
All right, sounds good here. Question number 3, and I apologize if I mispronounce any of these names. We've got Jay who asks, I would like to know, what will the world be like in 12 years with the rise of global warming?
Great question, and that's one that researchers are constantly looking at and tweaking. We know that our planet is getting warmer. and it is having different effects on different regions. But what we're seeing across many regions is that we're seeing more weather extremes. So we may end up getting the same amount of rainfall in the course of a year, but it may come in like really heavy bursts and then really dry. So we expect to see more extreme weather and then warmer weather on the whole going forward.
All right, question number 4 here from Emmett Thompson. What is the worst natural disaster to be stuck in? What natural disaster causes the most anxiety in people and animals?
Ooh, what do you think the worst natural disaster? Oh, that's this video game. What comes to mind, I think back to the Japanese earthquake in Tsunami 2000, because we were live on the air when that happened.
Well, the earthquake causes us tsunami.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was really bad. So the earthquake, just did untold damage. And then the tsunami, I remember seeing a house floating on the tsunami while the house was on fire. I mean, it was just remarkable, the damage that it did. So I'm probably going to say earthquake.
Yeah.
Can cause so many other problems. I remember watching that happening live too when I was in my dorm room with my Japanese roommate, and he was on the phone with his
Oh,
family just telling them to get out of where they were. So I remember just the stress of being so far away from that. So I think that's definitely a good answer for that one.
where were you in school?
University of Oregon, so not too far,
Okay.
but he was
Yeah.
very far from home and watching the nuclear power plant meltdown at the same time, and his
Right.
family wasn't
Yeah,
far away from
exactly.
that. So yeah,
Yeah.
just there's so many problems that evolved out of that disaster.
Yeah, I think
Let's see
that's
here.
the
Well, question 5 here from Chase. He asks, "What is the worst storm in Oregon's history?"
ooh, storm of 19 one two. Yeah. One is still the one by which are judged. There were winds of 100 miles an hour in Portland, upwards of, I think it was 180 miles an hour on the Oregon coast, wiped out just, you know, tens of thousands of acres of timberland, several deaths. I mean, that's the one. And meteorologically, when we analyze the path of that storm and its development, it really still hasn't been matched. There's been others that have come close, but that Columbus Day storm of 1962 is still kind of the epic one for the Northwest.
Speaking of snow here, Beckett France is asking, "Is it difficult to predict snow in Portland, and if so, why?"
No, not at all. Yes, it is. It is difficult to forecast snow in Portland. And so, first of all, we are not a very snowy city, which a lot of people wish we were because people like thunderstorms. People tend to love it when we get a good snowstorm. Um, so, the reason it's difficult to forecast snow in Portland is we have so our climate, our influence, that we live so close to. And while the ocean is summer, it's in the inland warming effect on us. So when we have any wind from the ocean, a little bit of warming, and it makes it difficult to get snow. Our big snowstorms are pretty much always when we have an east wind. So no wind coming off the ocean, but it's coming off the cold inland areas. And then the question is, we have to time it out so that we get the moisture in the clouds coming at the same time that it's cold. Now, oftentimes we'll get cold, but we don't have the moisture. We usually have lots of moisture, but it's not always cold enough to get snow. So getting those ingredients to coincide at the right time over Portland, that's the hard part.
And that's part of why people in Portland are not so used to the snow, and that's why the city kind of shuts down temporarily when it happens.
Yeah, abandon your cars, all ye who venture forth. I mean, that's just such a Portland thing, and that's been, people. There's been sort of a campaign over the last few years to get people to not do that. But yeah, it's probably our most difficult forecast scenario.
Well, in line with this question here, Stella McClurg asks, "During the winter storm of December 2004, getting really specific here, Matt, how cold were the temperatures?"
So I remember 2000 being all that cold. Only got down to 30. We didn't get any month. If Stella maybe is thinking of 2008 or 2008 was epic. That was Arctic Blast, as we branded it in the news. We had about 10 days where there was deep snow in Portland, and Portland picked up 19 inches of snow during that month of December 2008. And so that was kind of the big epic December. It dropped down to 20 degrees 3 times that month, and we had a 4-day stretch where we never got above freezing. So I'm wondering if Stella was maybe thinking of 2008 instead of 2004, because 2004 December, there wasn't really anything all that remarkable. We dropped down to 30, but only on one day. And our coldest high temperature that month was still well above freezing at 38. But December 2008, that was one for the record books.
Definitely. I mean, 19 inches of snow in Portland is, in my memory, really, really unusual growing up here. I just came from Vermont in my previous job, and that was, a normal thing. It would be 0 degrees,
Vermont,
and I'd be
right.
like, ah.
Yeah, like I remember my girlfriend, who is now my wife, at the time we're coming back to Mexico in this beginning, and we were in Mexico, and nobody was at the airport to pick up their passengers because of the snow. So the line, and this was pre-Uber, so it was all taxis. The line for the taxis was like an hour long. So everybody's standing out there in shorts and, maybe a sweatshirt trying to stay warm. And I didn't go home. I went straight to work, didn't go home for like 4 or 5 days. That was an epic, and her car was buried in Northeast Portland for about 2 weeks. That was an epic
Wow.
month.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it. All right, well, let's have our final question here. Sorry, I lost my place for a moment. I was looking for it. This one's from Paloma. She asks, in your opinion, going back to disasters here, which is worse, a tornado or a volcano?
Ooh, what do you think? And I assume she means a volcanic eruption. What do you think?
Probably volcano.
Yeah, I'd say volcano too.
Because I died most of
Roblox is this video game that he is currently enamored with, and he dies from volcanoes in Roblox. But in real life, not volcanic. Again, back to timing. Tornadoes don't happen in cities, destructive and death. But volcanic eruptions, ones we had in Hawaii a couple years ago, lasted a long time, wiped out entire neighborhoods. In Mexico, it can wipe out complete villages. So I would say a volcano, again, because it lasts longer. It just does more damage.
Right. Well, go for it.
One time, I heard the story about there was this dude in Mexico who was just with his horses riding out in his future cornfield, and then a crack in the ground just formed, and lava started coming out of it, and
Whoa.
a volcano formed right in his farm.
Wow, that is crazy. Yeah,
and wiped out the whole town.
See, that'd be worse than a tornado too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, this has been a really interesting discussion. We have really covered the board. We appreciate you both being here, Matt and Enzo. Thank you.
Thanks, Galen. It's been fun. Appreciate it. Jared, good to see you too.
And before we let you go, Matt, where can people find you online? And can you remind us of your podcast a little bit?
Big Umbrella, the name of the podcast, and get your out of the usual places. Again, that's all and we have a podcast as well, and you can find those there too. And then online, on Facebook and KGW.com and all the usual places. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you again both for being here, and thank you all so much for watching this special edition of KGW Digital Q&A. I'm Galen Ettlin. We'll see you later.
Bye, everybody.